Within the present timeline of the story, significant character deaths are actually extremely rare. The only two notable examples that I can recall are Ace and Whitebeard. Now there have been other characters who have died like Monet and Pedro, as well as a whole host of characters within flashbacks, but outside of Ace and Whitebeard, there simply haven't been any truly notable and very important characters who have passed away since Luffy had set sail from Dawn Island. In my opinion, I think that this is going to change by the end of the series. As One Piece gets closer to its climax, I think that we're honestly going to see some significant deaths of some very important characters, and they may well hit us one after the other. In this video, I'm going to go through all of the characters who are currently alive within the story who I think will not make it to the end of the series. Overall, I have found 5 major characters who are most likely going to die before the end of One Piece. I've come to this conclusion via several narrative hints that have been left behind by Oda. So without further delay, let's dive into this list of 5 characters who just aren't going to make it. The first and most obvious choice is the marine hero himself, Monkey D. Garp. While Garp's situation within the manga isn't exactly looking very great for him, I have in fact been under the impression that Garp isn't going to survive for quite some time now. And the main reason for this comes from his ideals. Garp's ideals simply do not align with those of the Marines and the world government. And this is something that we have seen both implicitly and explicitly throughout One Piece. So it goes without saying that from what we know of Garp as a character and how he has been portrayed, when all of this is contrasted against the atrocities that have been committed by the world government, you quickly realize that Garp isn't going to be supportive of their actions. Because while Garp may keep his position within the Marines believing that they are a lesser evil compared to the pirates of the world, Garp's concept of justice is just far removed from the extremely warped version of justice which is prevalent within the world government. The whole reason that Garp had refused to ever become an admiral was in order to not fall under the direct command of the celestial dragons, which indicates that Garp is aware of the type of people that they are. It can be assumed that Garp is getting further dissatisfied by his role within the present day Marines as he is forced to adopt the tenets of absolute justice under the leadership of Akainu. Garp's conflicting ideals were shown firsthand during the conflict at Marineford, where we had seen him struggle maintaining his loyalty to his family versus his loyalty to the Marines. Now this conflict had resulted in Garp reaching an impasse where he had declared that no one is going to be able to pass him. While Garp did knock back Marco the Phoenix, he deliberately allowed Luffy to knock him down, which led to Luffy freeing Ace. In a way, Luffy's actions almost allowed Garp to hold off on resolving his internal disagreement. While Garp could have freed Ace himself and certainly did want to, his sense of loyalty to the Marines had stopped him from doing so. Luffy freeing Ace had meant that Garp no longer had to take any actions which would have gone against his beliefs or his duty to the Marines. As we know, everything had fallen apart after Akainu had killed Ace. Garp's reaction to Ace's death had shown his true feelings, while moments before he personally stood in the way to stop Ace's death. When it had finally happened, Garp was inconsolable. He actually had to be held back in order to prevent him from killing Akainu. This internal battle between Garp's contradicting ideals is what I believe will ultimately be his undoing. I think that there's going to come a point in the future where Garp will once more find himself faced with a choice between his family and the Marines. As the final battle of One Piece approaches, I believe that Garp's role will involve him protecting Luffy in some way or another, and in the process of saving him, I think that he is going to die. Now this would be a brilliant parallel to the events of the Marineford War arc, where Garp was forced to watch as his adoptive grandson had died protecting his blood grandson. Garp sacrificing himself in order to save Luffy will definitely relieve the guilt and regret that he has been feeling over the past 2 years. I think that this would be an excellent way to end Garp's character arc as he finally comes to accept the injustice caused by the world government, which will ultimately make him take a personal stand against them in order to save his grandson at the cost of his own life. So yeah, Monkey D. Garp is the first individual who I think will not make it to the end of the story. Next up we have a fan favorite, and it's someone who has been a mainstay within the story for the past decade, and he's without a doubt one of the strongest people who are sailing the seas today. I am of course talking about the Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar D. Water-Law. If you aren't aware of the concept of Chekhov's gun, then you may well be surprised to see Law on this list. But when you actually deep dive into what has been going on, things very quickly become worrying for Law. Chekhov's gun is a narrative narrative principle within stories that essentially says that if the author directly draws the audience's attention towards something, then it must become necessary or important to the overall story at some point in the future. One thing relating to law that Oda has mentioned in passing time and time again is one of the lesser known abilities of his devil fruit, the Opi Opi no Mi. More specifically, it is the Eternal Youth Surgery, which the wielder of the Opi Opi no Mi can perform in order to grant someone eternal youth, but at the cost of their own life. There are dozens of theories out there regarding how this ability may have been used in the past, with the most popular one being that Imu and even the Gorosei have all been the recipients of this Eternal Youth Surgery. This theory has only grown stronger with the release of the most recent One Piece manga chapters, where we see Saint Saturn not appearing to have aged from what he had looked like during the God Valley incident decades ago. I think that the use of the Eternal Youth Surgery in the future will result in the death of Law. I believe that either willingly or unwillingly, Law will have to use this ability on someone in the future, but as of making this video, I'm not too sure on who this will be used on. It is possible that someone like Blackbeard, for example, could use the lives of Law's crew in order to try and bargain for Law to perform the surgery on him in order to save their lives. But in my opinion, Law doesn't seem like the kind of character who would struggle to find a way around these kind of threats. What seems the most likely scenario is that there is going to come a point in the future where Law finds himself broken and defeated against a stronger opponent. He won't have any hope or possibility of surviving. In a situation where survival looks very bleak, it would make sense for Law to use his ability on someone else before it's too late. I would have questioned if Law would ever find himself in such a situation, but his recent battle against Blackbeard is an indication that this isn't an impossible scenario. Now, it makes me wonder, who on earth would Law use this Eternal Youth Surgery on? Realistically, it could be anyone. At this point in the series, Law has become relatively close to Luffy, at least closer than any of the other members of the Supernova, and in actuality, he owes Luffy a decent debt of gratitude for the role that he played in taking down Doflamingo. This is something that Law definitely wouldn't have been able to achieve on his own. In my opinion, I don't think Luffy would ever accept such a procedure. When you combine the fact that Law is the only individual who wields the ability to grant somebody else eternal youth at the cost of his own life, it doesn't make me hold out much hope on the chances of Law making it all the way until the end of the series. Next up, we have the very first antagonist who is on this list, and it's none other than Blackbeard. At the moment, Blackbeard essentially stands as one of the three major antagonists of One Piece overall. This is alongside Im and Akainu, acting as almost the complete antithesis to Luffy in terms of their outlook and ideology as pirates. It seems highly likely that prior to the end of the series, both Blackbeard and Luffy will face off once again in a winner-takes-all fight for the One Piece, with the winner essentially affirming that their viewpoint was the correct one all along. Of course, there's no guarantee that Luffy is going to be the one who's going to deal the finishing blow to Blackbeard, because he does in fact have a lot of enemies. Blackbeard had overthrown the former Rocks pirate Ochaka no Hachinozu, he had scarred Shanks, and he is currently holding the marine hero Garp hostage, and he seemingly appears to have knowledge that is forbidden by the world government, and in general, characters from all sides would likely be falling over each other just for a chance to put Blackbeard down once and for all. When you command the power of two of the world's strongest devil fruits, as well as a crew made up of some of the most ruthless pirates on the sea, it's not a surprise that Blackbeard is very difficult to defeat. Now, this is not to say that it's an impossible feat. Despite his considerable crew and vast number of followers, they seem to be fairly isolated from one another, as we saw with the partial crew which faced off against the Hot Pirates. So when it comes to Blackbeard, whether if he is defeated by Luffy or somebody else, it is very unlikely in my opinion that Blackbeard will survive throughout the wars and conflicts that are yet to come. This is despite his ungodly strength and the multiple devil fruits that he is in possession of. We're following up with another antagonist, and this is the elusive ruler who sits on top of the world within his garden palace in Merijo. This is Im-sama. As the ultimate leader of the world government and by extension the Marines, Im is the head of almost all of the corruption within the One Piece world. The destruction of Ohara and Leluzia, the murder of King Cobra, almost all actions taken by the Gorosei in the present and the centuries past, ranging from everything way back to the Void Century and the Ancient Kingdom, Im appears to have been largely responsible for all of this. Now, with Im and the Celestial Dragon's long-standing war against the members of the D-Clan, it seems like they are set on a collision course with Luffy and many of the other major pirates who are currently roaming the seas. Aside from acting as the guiding force behind the world government, Im also acts as its personification. Im is the world government, and there just so happens to be a major power within the One Piece world whose entire goal and purpose for existing is the dismantling of the world government. This of course is the Revolutionary Army. Given the Revolutionary Army's goal, it seems almost likely that they will be the ones who ultimately have the responsibility to overthrow Im, and judging from what we've seen thus far, the only character within the Revolutionary Army who would even stand a chance in a fight against him would be their leader and founder, Monkey D. Dragon. I covered Dragon extensively in one of my previous videos where I'd analyzed the strongest characters in One Piece who we know absolutely nothing about, but even simply from a narrative perspective, Dragon is the leader of a force opposing the entirety of the Marines and the world government. If he didn't have the strength to cause them to be wary of him, then the revolutionaries would have been crushed years ago. After over 20 years of building and growing their influence, the time has finally arrived for the revolutionaries to make their move against the world government. Already they have blockaded Mary Jo, and with the survival of Sabo following his infiltration to free the slaves, they now know more about the rulers of the world than ever before. Despite both Dragon and Im being two characters that we know next to nothing about, they are considered to be the strongest within the One Piece world, and there's no doubt that that eventual clash is going to be legendary. In my opinion, a battle of this scale can only result in one victor emerging alive. There is an equal chance that the loser of this fight could be Dragon, in which case he would take Im's place on this list. But as things stand within the story, it is seeming more and more likely that the end of Im's long reign is slowly creeping closer and closer. Finally, to round things off of, we have the most shocking death out of everybody on this list. The last character who I think isn't going to make it to the end of One Piece is in fact Usopp. I think that killing off one of these Straw Hats would be an extremely controversial decision by Oda, and I'm sure that the reaction to it by fans will be anything but restrained. If one of these Straw Hats were to die though, I feel like Usopp is the most likely and the one that makes the most sense. Out of Luffy as the main character, who for obvious reasons we will assume will survive until the end of the series, we are left with 9 Straw Hats who could each potentially face the chopping block. Zoro, Sanji and Jinbei are too strong for most characters to ever pose much of a threat to them, with Robin possibly just barely becoming a powerhouse in her own right after the reveal of her demon form during Wano. But even if you remove strength from the equation, one of the reasons that I could see Usopp dying before the end of the series is that his death in no way goes against his dream, and it may well just contribute to him achieving it. Every single one of the Straw Hats has their own personal dream, ranging from Luffy's aspirations to become Pirate King, as well as his still yet to be revealed dream, all the way up to Chopper's dream to cure every single illness. All of the Straw Hats' dreams are grand in scale, and something that would no doubt be extremely difficult to achieve. Usopp's dream in comparison is slightly more simple, as he dreams of becoming a brave warrior of the sea. Compared to each of the other Straw Hats' dreams, dying would not necessarily prevent Usopp from becoming a brave warrior and resolving to face or even accept death for a cause that he believes in, or even a captain that he believes in. This may well be what is required of him to achieve his dream. So this was my opinion on the 5 characters who I think aren't going to make it to the end of One Piece. Let me know all of your thoughts on who you think won't be surviving until the end of the series in the comments. Do you agree or disagree with the choices that I've made? Do you think that one of the upcoming deaths in the story involves one of the Straw Hats? I really look forward to reading all of your thoughts and your own lists for characters who won't make it until the end. And as always, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next One Piece video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.